first, near last, I'd like to do a little introduction to Michael. You heard a little bit about him earlier. He's a senior administrative assistant and member of the North America Region Board for Open, which is our Oracle Pride employee network for LGBTQ plus and allies. So that is where I met Michael at Oracle. We're both there, and he's done tremendous work for Open, and really appreciate the great energy that he brings to the work that he does for our employee resource group, as well as others that he's affiliated with. From Central Illinois, but he's been in Oakland the last 6 years. His coming out process helped him really understand how high anxiety can impact your life. And so he has now moved into a mindfulness practice and is much more comfortable in his skin. And he'll talk about that hopefully a little bit today. Lives with his boyfriend Javier and their cat Stevens, and a rescued sight hand Prince Samuel Cashew Capote. Now that's a mouthful. I like those 4 names. I used to have 3 names for most of my dogs. 4 is good. And he enjoys movies, hiking, cycling, and hopes to cross the finish line in Los Angeles at the completion of his third AIDS life cycle ride in June of 2022. And we were really lucky to hear about that ride and how that impacts the lives of the people that ride and do work on as roadies and crew during that week that the people ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles. And one more slide before I go and turn it over to Michael. Happy to say that Michael is celebrating his birthday with us. So please enjoy your big gay birthday, Michael.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
All
my
right.
goodness gracious. That rainbow cake that you had there, I asked my ex-husband to make one of those one time, and he did. It was wonderful.
Wow. Well, that's nice.
That was outstanding. Yeah.
A lot of food color.
Well, Cheryl, thank you so much for that intro. And wow, being present here for the meeting, I had no idea how much you were involved in and doing the Rotary and how much additional work that you put your time into. When do you do stuff for yourself? Because you're doing you got your job, then you do so much for Open and the Rotary. It's unbelievable. You're truly inspirational, Cheryl. I do have a few slides, if that's okay. Yeah, I got a slide. Share screen here.
Yes, I think Renee may need to. Oh, you got it. Okay, good. She's on top of it.
That's me. So the points of storytelling, I enjoy storytelling because I think it's a great way for us to connect with each other. And I've kind of put together some of my thoughts about my journey between growing up in the Midwest and Central Illinois, where it's not as progressive, wonderful, kind, friendly people, but being more conservative, somebody like me that definitely didn't fit in there. It was a little challenging at times. So telling my story about going from there to California, where it's much more liberal, it did change my life. But the journey along the way kind of had some challenges, and I would like to talk about those. Before we get started, I just wanted everybody to take a moment, think about a time somebody told you a story, or think about a story that you shared with somebody else. Why was the person sharing the story, or why were you sharing it? What was the significance of it? And how did it impact you? Thinking about these things as people are telling you, it helps make the story stick with you longer. So why do we do storytelling? We grew up with them. We were telling stories from the get-go, telling about family histories, telling about fairy tales, telling about life experiences. We think in stories. When we think about what we did for our day, we kind of map it out like, oh, I did this, then I went on to, maybe I went to the grocery store, and then I went somewhere else and met up with a friend, and we had dinner and we talked about this. So we think in stories, and it's in our everyday life. They invoke emotions. They could either be sad, happy, scared. All kinds of emotions can come out of stories that people share with us. Ultimately, I hope the story inspires us. If we can be inspired and all of us sharing these stories, what else could we do? How much more of an impact can we make? How many more people can we reach? How many more people can we help make change happen? So I'm going to start with my early years. I was born in 1979. Here are some photos of me from when I was a kid. Let me see if I can make that smaller. There we go. So you see the picture in the middle, that's me. I still have a love for stickers. I am one who writes snail mail still. I send letters to my mom and many other people. I like sending cards in the mail. And those always come decorated with stickers too. So I've had those in my life clearly since early childhood. That's my family picture. That's my dad and my mom there with me. I'm on my mom's lap. And then my little sister wearing her strawberry, or not my little sister, my older sister wearing her strawberry shortcake dress. The other pictures I picked because they show a part of me that maybe even I didn't realize at the time what was going on with me. The bike that you see in the top left, the little three-wheeler thing, that's from the General Lee, or not the General, the Dukes of Hazzard. And I got the Daisy Duke one. I wanted the girl one. And then of course the stereotypical like playing with dolls, that's a girl toy. There's me enjoying my time playing with one in my leisure suit with the butterfly collar. And then of course the picture of me down there, I don't know if you can see the cake, but it's Smurfette. Of course I wanted the girl Smurf on my cake, and clearly I was very touched by it. My face on that one, that looks funny to me. So I share those photos to give you an idea of like what it was like for me. And I remember one of the things that my dad never wanted me to play with what was called girl toys. He didn't want me playing with Barbies. He didn't want me playing with My Little Ponies, dolls, any of that sense. I had to stick to boy toys. I think maybe the closest I got to something that was, and I guess it's maybe I would call it gender neutral, the Care Bears. He didn't have a problem with me having Care Bears until one day in first grade, I wanted to take one to school for show and tell. And he told me that if it wasn't actually show and tell, because he was going to call the school, which I don't think he really was going to, but as a kid, you don't know that my ass was grass, pardon my French, if it wasn't actually show and tell. So now I'm clutching. I'm like, I hope it was show and tell. I hope I'm right about this. I hope it doesn't get canceled. I went ahead and took it because I was pretty confident, carried that in with me. But the way he would talk to me about playing with girl toys and that they weren't for me, and I would play with them in secret, like when he wasn't around. Or I remember I'd go to my cousin Jennifer's house, and when I would stay the night there, it was just me and her hanging out. Of course, her mom was there too, but I got to play comfortably with all the girl toys, and it was so nice. And I just got to be me, and I didn't have the worry like, is my dad gonna come in and find me? Is he gonna yell at me? And I just got to be myself. But being told that I can't play with certain toys made me feel like there was something wrong with me. So even as a kid, I started thinking like, why is it I'm drawn to these things, but I'm told that I'm not supposed to be a part of those things. I'm not supposed to handle them. I really believe that we should try to take as much gender assignment to toys and clothes, take that out of the equation, because it is damaging. When somebody wants to dress a certain way, wants to play with something, it can really make them feel like something is wrong with them. And then of course they're managing that. That's festering them at a young age. I remember going to school and I was different. I screamed like a girl. I still do sometimes. I get startled easily. Mom can attest to that. I was called almost all the names in the book. Gay, homo, queer, faggot. All these were coming to me because I screamed like a girl. I threw a ball like a girl. I ran like a girl, so to speak. And I kept like, even in baseball practice, they were trying to tell me like, this is how you throw the ball. And it's like, I just wasn't getting, it wasn't clicking with me, like why my form wasn't working out for that. And then I realized like, maybe baseball's not for you. Try something different, get into running. You don't have to throw anything, which I did run. I'll talk about that more later. But being called those names started instilling a fear in me that what might happen to me by those people attacking me with those names verbally. Will anything else happen? Will I get beat up? Will I get bullied further? How long might this go on? What else might happen? And it put a lot of fear in me. And add that fear to my dad kind of being, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, and I already told my mom that I might be talking about my childhood a little bit. But yeah, there was physical abuse in the house. And as a kid, you're thinking like every household has this. Every kid gets spanked with a belt, every kid gets slapped, every kid gets, whatever may happen as far as what they're doing to try to get me to behave or shush up or what have you. That added into the fear that I would have. And I had to bury that because you can't go through life living in fear, but it's still there. It festers in you. And what made that difficult, I felt like nobody could ever really know me, who I was, because there was a part of me that just wasn't able to be me. And like, how could anybody know me if I had to hide part of myself? So when it comes into the hiding, I'm gonna go to another fun one for you. I move into my high school years. So you get through school, you're getting bullied. I mean, I remember this time on the bus that there was two people that wouldn't let me walk down the aisle, and they just kept pushing me back and forth. They were on opposite sides, seats on opposite sides of the aisle, and they just kept pushing me back and forth. And the bus driver eventually said, "Let him through." And I got through, but then they would follow me and they'd sit behind me and they'd flick my ear. They'd throw things at me. They'd push me even some more. They would start saying things to try to get me riled up. And all I could do was just sit there, because if you responded, that would make them do more. And also, I was too scared. I wasn't one that could fight. I've never been in a fight. I didn't know how to protect myself. I didn't want to argue with them. I was intimidating. But what I ended up doing is, I call it masking and trying to blend in and hiding who I am, because if this is how these people get treated, meaning being different, being gay, being trans, if this is how they get treated, I don't want to be this. This isn't the life that I want to live. So I try to blend in and I try to figure out how to make this work. So I get into high school, and yes, I got into sports. I did track. I was really, really good at track. You could see my photo there with all the medals that I earned, and that was just some that we brought to the photo shoot that day. And then there's more medals on my Letterman's jacket. And I bring the attention to the Letterman's jacket because the sleeves. The sleeves were white, and everybody else got their Letterman jackets with black sleeves. But I was like, you know what? I don't think black looks as good as the white does. I think because our school colors are even purple and white. So I'm like, well, why do they get black sleeves? I want white sleeves. So it was a moment where it's like, you know what? I want to be different, and that's okay. But I did get made fun of. I did get ridiculed. Why'd you get white sleeves? And it's like, well, why does it matter? It was my own personal choice to do that. And then in the middle, that picture, that was me. I was voted prom king my senior year. And the reason I share that is because I got involved in a lot of things. I did cross country, I did basketball, I did track, I was in National Honor Society, I was in student council, I was class president. So I was doing something right. I was getting this masking thing to work. I was blending in, people liked me, I got along with everybody. Well, not everybody, most everybody. There wasn't the negativity coming from me, I guess is how I'd word it. Um, I've even been told since high school, a lot of people either in my class or classes ahead or behind me that I went to school with had told me like I was one of the only people that was nice to them. Or the other thing, I was voted sweetest too. So I was doing something right. But there was still that part of me that I still didn't feel I could express or I could be. I'm fortunate that that's kind of like what comes with the privilege. I'm fortunate that I could blend. There wasn't a lot that stood out about me aside from the screaming, or one of my arms would fly out a little bit further when I ran. I hung out with all the girls most of the time. Not all the girls. I had girlfriends most of the time. I hung out with them more so than I did with the boys. But I didn't know anybody else like me. I didn't have anybody else like me to hang out with, at least not that I knew of. There could have been other people struggling the same way I was. But in the Midwest, it was too conservative. I didn't want to be in the situation where more people would chastise me. So if I could keep that internally and people only do it based on what they believe, that will limit my exposure. So I kept it under wraps. I also learned during all that process that keeping these emotions built in, the physical abuse that was put in, or that was done to me in my life, it built up some anxiety. Now, anxiety already runs in my family. My mom's a big worrier, and we talk about that. And I have to tell her all the time, Mom, I'm okay. And she's like, that's all I need to hear. um, but it built that up that I didn't even realize all that was there going forward in my life. We always thought, like, because I was in track, we thought like it was just nerves. I was worried about, winning the race, if I was going to win today, or was I going to get a better time? Was I going to get an injury or anything like that? All those kind of things that come up when you're getting ready to do an event, do a sporting event. And I knew deep inside there was more to it. I knew that I had to be out in front of other people, and especially with the running, that people would be noticing my form. When I played basketball, I was always told that I didn't shoot the ball correctly, that one of my elbows would always go out the other way. And it was just another, in my head, I was just thinking, like, people look at this so much, and it's just another way that I felt a little bit judgment coming on me. And that was hard to deal with as well. But again, I did the best I could to bury that, blend in, be cheerful, be happy, because that was the way that I got through dealing with that stuff. I was a class clown. I did act up. Was just talking to my mom about in fourth grade, I got straight U's in conduct, which was unsatisfactory. And so looking back, I'm wondering, like, did all that play a part in also building up the anxiety that I have? So after high school, I came out at 19. So we're talking around the year 1999 is when I turned 19. And what helped me come out, and I got some photos for this one as well. Some of you may remember America Online. We did get a computer. We had internet coming in through our phone line, and I was able to get on America Online and find other gay people. That was my resource. Finally getting to connect somewhere, because people weren't out in the Midwest, so they may be gay, I wouldn't know, but online we were comfortable saying we were gay. And I would go into, I would chat in the San Francisco men for men chat rooms, because I thought all the gay people were in San Francisco. I truly believe that. And I was like, eventually, and I always had wanted to move to San Francisco. I always felt like, you know what, that's probably the place for me. But I met somebody named Jeremy, and Jeremy lived in Champaign. And in Champaign, it's a college town. The University of Illinois is there. So that bar in the middle that's listed there, the Chester Street Bar, that's a dance club. That's a gay dance club where you can get in at 19. So it was the first time I went, it's actually the first bar I really went to. The first time that I went to a gay club, and I walk in and there's other gay people, I'm like, where are all these people come from? There's gay people around me. I had no idea. And I finally felt like, oh my gosh, I found a place. I found people. I found a tribe. I found some place where I feel like I belong. And I couldn't thank Jeremy enough for taking me there and opening my eyes to that. And that's what helped me come out even more. And I share that picture that was with it in the gray shirt, because I had more confidence. And when I came out, it was almost like peeling a little bit of a layer off, that I could like unveil myself a little bit more. I can let people see a little bit more of me, because I saw, like, okay, maybe I can live in the Midwest and be safe. Maybe I can meet other people. Maybe I can date people. Maybe I can have a boyfriend. And getting more comfortable in my own skin really helped develop to stay in, I don't really know the best way to word it, but it helped me be successful in, I started dating Justin, who's my ex-husband. We had a great relationship. We were together for 13 years, but also helped me be successful in my job, building up that confidence that comes from being comfortable, feeling safe, belonging where you work, that helped me. The coming out at 19 that I'm referring to. So I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So I worked in Champaign, and when I worked in Champaign, the college town, as I mentioned, it was a little bit more liberal. So I was more comfortable being myself. But then I moved to St. Charles, Missouri, and Missouri overall pretty much is more conservative than liberal. But I was near St. Louis, so it was had a little bit more liberal atmosphere. But I did work at a credit union where I wasn't comfortable putting a picture of Justin, who was my boyfriend at the time, on my desk. It wasn't that kind of atmosphere for me. And so it kind of put me back into the, am I hiding part of me? Am I ashamed of myself? And am I just don't want to have the conversation? There were all those thoughts going through my head. And then when Justin got the opportunity, he for his job, he got a promotional opportunity. And they said, here's some places where we need management. What would be your top location if you could pick? And so he picked San Francisco. And in 2011, we moved to the Bay Area, and it was out here. And that was in 2011, and it was out here where we started going to pride events. We started going to more gay clubs. We went to the Castro, and you see the giant big gay flag that flies there right at Castro and Market. And man, did I ever feel like, man, I can be myself in an even broader sense. So more of me opened up, but not as much as I thought. I thought I had it. I thought, okay, I'm a gay man. I've figured out who I am. Let's do this. So here's me present day. So you can notice the change. There's a lot of differences between my earlier pictures to pictures today. I was much more conservative where I was when I was younger, but then as I got older and more comfortable with my own skin and coming out, that this is what you see. um, we went to the bars in the Castro, and the bars in the Castro, I didn't realize at the time were a little cliquish. It was kind of more like just young, youthful. It didn't really feel like as accepting as I thought it might. But then I met, after Justin and I divorced and I moved to Oakland, I met my current boyfriend, Javier. And Javier took me to a club called the Cat Club. And in the Cat Club, that's the top right picture. That's where I'm at in the Cat Club. Um, I saw all kinds of people, male, female, gay, straight, trans, bi. There were couples, poly couples, meaning they have three people in the relationship. People that are into leather. They had different theme nights, goth nights, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my home. This is my home. I like being around all these different people because we're all the people that, like, we don't care what you do as long as you're nice. You be you, I'll be me, but let's just be nice and kind to each other and get along. And that's where I discovered there's much more diversity than I even realized. And in doing that, it opened my eyes to so much that I finally decided, like, you know what? I want to work on some of this anxiety. I want to work on some of this depression. I want to feel more comfortable about myself. And I finally, after months and months of trying to find a good therapist that I liked and testing some out, I finally found one that I really connected with. Dr. Hickman, he's been wonderful. I've been with him for a couple years now, but he's helped me discover more about myself as far as what anxiety I might have, where it may have come from, how I could manage it, different techniques. And he introduced me to mindfulness. And when I learned about mindfulness at first, I didn't think I'd be able to do it. I didn't think I'd be able to sit still for meditation. I didn't think I could, close my eyes and not fall asleep. But the more I learned about it, the more, like, there's not really a wrong way to do it. It's a practice. And the more you practice, the better you get. And that's absolutely true. I started doing it, and because mindfulness is all about being in the present and not being judgmental about things, just letting things be. And because, we'd go out for walks, we'd walk around the lake and we'd see people, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, why is she wearing that hat with that shirt? That doesn't go together. But through mindfulness, you just like, hey, check out that lady enjoying her hat and shirt together. Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people wear. As long as they're being nice and they're not hurting anybody, just let people be. And so that's become kind of core for me, living in the present and just trying not to judge people for anything, because I don't want to be judged. I didn't like being judged. So I'll bring you up to 2019 when I got the job at Oracle. And I got the job at Oracle, and in one of the Slack channels, Slack is an internal communication tool that we use. And there's different channels that you can for different topics. There's, of course, meeting and work related ones, but there's also ones where we could connect with other people with similar interests. And one of the coworkers that worked in Oakland with me had their name, but then in parentheses behind their name, they had they, them. And I wasn't really sure what they, them meant. I had never heard of why somebody would put they, them after their name. And then I saw another time where, because we got all kinds of emojis and even custom emojis, the person responded, did a click of an emoji and as a response, and it was an agender heart. And agender just means a person doesn't identify as male or female. They're just them. They are they are them. And I'm like, a whole nother world within my community that like I had not even really realized was there. People that, you know, gender fluid comes into play, agender comes into play, transgender comes into play. There's so much that diversity out there and so many different aspects of how people identify and how they want to be seen and heard in the world. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And honestly, that night I went home and I cried. And I cried because I really felt like, Michael, you weren't really as knowledgeable about your own community as you thought you were. And you kind of missed the boat about all these people that are around you that are looking for them to be identified as how they want to be seen. Because I wanted to be seen as who I am, and I wanted other people to accept me like that. But now I've learned about this other, because the LGBTQ, then it goes IAA. There's all kinds of other letters that are added onto there. So we do LGBTQ plus to make it inclusive. That's what I needed to learn more about. And the next day I told this person in the office, I said, I wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank you for opening my eyes up to this, because it's given me a reason to look into this further and learn about that. And it helped me start to learn and understand other people. And when you learn and understand people, you're able to accept them and you don't place judgment on them. That also inspired me to get more involved in the employee resource group, which is how I met Cheryl through Open, Oracle Pride Employee Network. And I would join events as a volunteer. I would help lead events. I did an event at the AIDS Memorial Grove in San Francisco. And it was really fun getting engaged. And all the different people that would come into play, it didn't matter who they were. We would have our allies. We would have people from, the other employee resource groups. We have an Asian one. We have one for a Hispanic. We got all kinds of different ones to belong. And when we come together, it's like, okay, this is what I feel like the world should look like. And the world didn't look like this in the Midwest. And I would love for people that live in the Midwest to have a chance to live outside of that bubble. Because if they could and they could get to know other people and other cultures, other lifestyles, and realize like, there's more than one way to do things. There's more than one religion. There's more than one set of holidays that people recognize. We recognize so many different holidays, ones that I never heard of until I got to Oracle and started getting more involved in the different cultures. The Lunar New Year just started taking place, and I never knew what Lunar New Year meant until I was out here and joined Opal, the Asian employee resource group. So having all this different diversity out here kind of pushed me to be more of who I wanted to be. It started making me feel more comfortable in my own skin, because I was like, these people are being who they want to be. I want to be more about who I am. And I have to give a lot of props to Javier. He was really, really good about like talking me through, like, if this is how you feel, that's okay. If this is who you want to be, that's okay. If you want to express yourself, that's okay. And the more and more I got comfortable with that, I learned that like I could get my ear pierced. I could grow my hair out. My dad would never let me have a tattoo, a piercing. I couldn't have long hair. And when I moved to California, Mom, you might remember, I did grow my hair out. And the reason I did was because I could. And it got to my shoulders. And by then I was like, yeah, long hair is not for me, but I wanted to do it just because I could. The piercing, this was the lower one, just happened over this past summer. I was always too scared to get my ear pierced, and of course anxiety plays a role into that. But through mindfulness, I went in there and I was like, okay, just take a deep breath and then just get it done, and boom, it was done. And I was like, well, that was easy. Why was I so scared of that? And that's what I think, having the mindful practice to counter the anxiety or the worry that comes with everything that I've been through in my life, it really helps center and ground me. So those kind of scenarios, like, I can deal with them, I can manage them better. When Harvard and I did our trip to Disneyland in 2019, we did Disneyland over Christmas and New Year's, and what a fabulous trip because it was right before COVID. I was so glad to get an awesome trip like that in before the holidays. But my anxiety gets set off by loud noises, by crowds. And of course, Disneyland is filled with loud noises and crowds. So the way that we did to manage this was we had a hotel that was within walking distance to the entrance, and we would take breaks. We didn't have to be at the park from open to close, even though the tickets are expensive and you want to get as much, take advantage of that as much as you can. We took breaks and we would leave. Like, we would go spend, we get there first thing in the morning, and then around lunchtime we'd leave, take a nap. I love naps. I've never learned how much I love to rest. That's one of my favorite things to do, is just rest. But we would take a nap and then we'd come back and you're re-energized. You're enjoying yourself more. You're able to stay at the park later and you're not dragging. um, we would hear families leaving the park as it's closing, and you hear the kids crying like, oh, they've been here all day, haven't they? um, but since I've been in Oakland and since I've been around a much more diverse area, I've been able to be myself a lot more. I've learned I don't have to keep everybody that I've known in my life in my immediate circle, or even my you know, next circle. I have my close knit people that I will tell almost anything to, that are there, that I know could be there for me anytime I needed them to. But then I have another, like, you go a little bit further out as far as your outreach for your friends and your support. But I learned, like, I don't have to have all my height, even though I was class president, was friends with almost everybody in my class. It was small. There was only like 84 people in my class. Um, I don't have to have them all close to me because they don't all share the same views as me. And I learned one of them. She was one of my bestest in high school. It's the topic of teaching LGBTQ history in schools. She was against that, and she didn't want her kids to be taught that. She did it went against her religion. And it's that kind of thing that I'm like, you were in my close circle, but now I feel like the whole time you were hating the sin, not the sinner. And that doesn't really feel like they're accepting me. That just feels like tolerance, so to speak. So I've learned how to keep people close to me. And if somebody is like not there as far as being supportive or inclusive, I don't have to have them in my immediate circle. I stop worrying about what other people think. And some of that comes with age too. You just get to the point, like, you know what, I'm just throwing on these socks and sandals. I don't care. I'm just walking the dog. Who cares what people think? But there's a strength that comes with that, even just through coming out and peeling off all the different layers, as I mentioned, about who I am and learning more about myself. Um, it's very, very empowering. So after all this time, I finally got to the point where I feel like I identify as a queer, gender fluid, gay man. And queer just means I'm weird, I'm different, and I love it. I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to be my own self. I want to be colorful. I have a kind of, it's not necessarily, it's kind of not an alter ego, but a nickname. I like Sparkle Otter. I love glitter. I love to sparkle. I love to shine. I love to, I don't know. I just love to be happy. And being able to identify who I am has really helped me be happy and help me be who I am. This is me. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you so much. I hope I didn't talk too long. I was trying to keep
No,
the pace going.
that was perfect. Thank you so much. So, you
Sure.
know, I've learned a lot more about you, Michael, tonight. So it's been really great.
Awesome.
You know, and I mean, I think many of us have had that experience where you finally feel like you're with your tribe, you know, and I mean, for me, that was going on my first Olivia cruise with it's a lesbian travel company and they buy the whole boat and everybody, you know, on the boat is a lesbian and it's just, you know, and their motto is let's be free or something like
Mhm.
that. But, you know, that feeling where there was no judgment and we were all different, but we were all there loving each other and accepting each other. And
Absolutely.
that's really quite cool.
You
So
you know, I look back and I sometimes I think about, you know, like, and this is why I really encourage people to, like, you know, let's get rid of the gender reveal parties because, you
mhm,
know, oh, I'm having a boy, but then the boy decides, like, you know what, this isn't the body for me. I actually feel like I identify as female. If we let kids develop on their own without judgment, just let them be, they'll flourish so much more. They'll be so much more comfortable in their own skin. We can help avoid a lot of this anxiety that gets built up from feeling like you don't fit in or feeling like you have to hide a part of you. And that's why I really strive to, you know, just stop gender. It's not binary. It's not just male and female.
yeah, I think that's so true. So anybody have any questions for Michael? Comments, questions?
I had a question.
Sure.
So you talked about how your friend and hating the sin, not the sinner.
Yeah.
How did like that affect your anxiety? Because like I used to have anxiety ordering my drink at Starbucks. I can imagine like having a conversation with a friend.
Mhm.
How did that go?
Oh yeah, and I, you know, I totally get the whole ordering the drink at Starbucks. That's when they came out with the app and you order it in advance. Oh, it's perfect. And if they have like order ahead not available nowadays on the app, that happens sometimes. They're just too busy or something. And it's like I won't go because I don't want to order at the counter. So I get that. Menus are overwhelming for me. If you've been to the Cheesecake Factory, their menu's like 17 pages long. I'm just like I can't decide. I can't do it. Um, the interaction with that friend, that was a difficult one because we were so close. When she had her first baby, I held her baby. She married her high school sweetheart he was actually one of my bullies in junior high, but then he got together with her and she was one of my friends, so she told him to knock it off. And then after high school, he actually apologized to me for having bullied me in school. I was in their wedding. I was one of his best men. So it hit me really, really hard to hear that. Unfortunately, this conversation was online with her, and it wasn't pretty. It was kind of more fighting with each other and trying to. This was still before I realized, like, you know what, you're not going to convince people on the internet of anything. Because I used to think like I'll be able to change their minds, and I'd just be going back and forth. But I realized like no, people's minds are made up when they're online. They already know what they want. If they want to seek out and change their mind, they'll do that on their own. um, so yeah, we kind of had a fight. We haven't talked since then until the whole until between 2016 and 2020 when you got to see a lot more people get comfortable being, you know, when we had the president that we had, people seemed to be a lot more comfortable hating and a lot more people okay saying things freely. And she said some things to me that I just was really shocked that she would say those. The anxiety comes up with that when I see pictures and I think about it, but I just have to remind myself, like, Michael, you're just being true to yourself. And that kind of felt, like I said, it falls into that whole, like, I don't have to keep her close in my circle. If I see her when I'm back home, she still is in the hometown area. If I see her, I'll say hi to her. I'll be cordial with her. But it just really tore me up that I really felt like she had only been tolerating me all that time.
I have
Did
a
that
question,
answer your question a little bit? Hope. Sure, Steve.
Steve?
Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate your story, and I like the way you presented it. There were, and it's funny, I feel like with my rigid binary mindset, I think I'm open-minded, but I have a ways to go. And I'm impressed and inspired by your story, because maybe I can move forward and be a little bit more open-minded as well. But I really, when you talked about masking in high school, I totally related to that. And I'm a teacher, especially special education. And I had a conference just a couple of days ago with a parent, and she was explaining how her daughter, she's very, very minimal on the scale of autism. She's like very, very, very mild. Like I didn't even know she had autism. And she explained how in school she masks being normal. She comes to school and she's a normal teenage girl, and she's popular and she's pretty and she's blah, blah, blah. But she goes home every day, and the parents explain it, she has a huge meltdown every day. She just comes apart, and then the parents, they got to calm her down, whatever. Then she goes out, masks, then the next day she is quote unquote whatever normal is in middle school. But I really, it's sad that we have to do this, but I could really relate, being in high school. You took me back to high school and that time, and awkward time blending in, just. And I grew up in overseas, but we had a lot of Midwestern kids come to our schools, and they were different than like Californians and other, they were friendly and everything, but we were kind of homophobic or something like that, so it was just something that was different about the Midwest. And my dad's from there, so I used to visit there. But I've been in California since '76, and then, but I get into that rigid binary mindset a lot. And I close out that diverse openness that I would rather be, so I don't know. I was inspired to hear about a few of the points you said, and I'm rambling, but hopefully I make sense.
Fine.
Okay.
No, you make a lot of sense, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think that takes courage for you to say, like, I've been on a binary mindset. A lot of us have. And even for me, when I first was learning about they them, I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get this? How am I going to remember this? How am I going to make sure that I don't offend the person? But the worrying just made it more difficult to do that. So I stopped worrying about it, because I realized that if you say the wrong pronoun, just correct yourself, apologize, and move on. It's fine. As long as you're treating people kindly. You talk about the masking and the meltdown. That's something that I actually meant to mention. It's exhausting. It is so tiresome just trying to fit in and not be yourself and not be able to, I don't know. It would get tiring. So I get the meltdown.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did the exact same things you did in high school. Try to blend in, track and team, popular, do sports, have girlfriends. Exactly. So I can totally relate. It was a great story. Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah.
I'm curious, Michael and Lynn together, when you actually recognized that you fit the term gay. So you started out knowing that you wanted to play with toys that your father was steering you away from. But when did you come out to yourself? And then ultimately, Lynn, when did you have a clue?
Sure. That's a great question. I appreciate you asking that. The earliest memory that I have is as far as really recognizing that I was different, not a coming out, if you will. That was at 5th grade. 5th grade was when I was like, and I'll share the story of why that I remember that. There was, we had lockers, PE lockers, and we keep our gym clothes and gym shoes in the lockers. Well, one time I left my street shoes in the locker. So the next morning for school, I went down to my gym locker to get it out, my tennis shoes out. And the gym teacher was showered in there. And I was like, ooh, hey, gym teacher. So the next day, I pretended like I forgot my shoes in there again, even though I did it on purpose, because I was hoping I'd catch the gym teacher in there again. He wasn't in there the second time. But that's when I knew, like, Michael, it's something really different about you, if you're going to that length. So that's my earliest memory. Now you ask my mom, oh, she knows how to come off mute. Yay.
Yeah, I figured it out. Yeah. Well, what Mike just was talking about earlier about masking, he did a hell of a job masking, because there were points in time I kind of thought is my son growing up gay? Is my son gay? Well, then the next day or two, it's like, no, he's not. I didn't care if he played with Barbie dolls or anything, but I knew his dad wouldn't like it. His dad was a macho football star in high school and all this. And, but Mike also had those little hot cars, Hot Wheels or whatever he
Wheels.
played with all the time too. And I'm like, yeah,
Little
I'm like,
cars.
okay, that's great. Yeah, all his little cars, and he had bottle cap collection, and he just, but then there's times when I'd see glimmer or something, I'm wondering, it came to my mind again. But
Mhm.
you know what's bad? I mean, he was so successful in school and the things he was involved in. You get busy with your life, and I'm like, maybe I should have taken more time and sit and had a face-to-face to talk to him. I don't know if he would have opened up to me earlier or not. He dated a couple of gals, well, one for a long time, and
For
I
2.5
just,
years,
you
yeah.
know, was it that long?
Yeah.
So he gave mixed, I had mixed thoughts about it. So, but I never took the time to sit with him and even just ask him. And I think maybe that's because you know, he's okay. But I'm like, what a struggle he will have if he is gay.
Yeah.
But you go on with your life. He masked it, and that's where we were.
Yeah, it was also going through the 80s, and the AIDS pandemic was going on. So the thought was like, oh, if you're gay, you're gonna die of AIDS at that time. So that fear was there. And, you know, I still remember when I would go to get tested in the early 90s, and you had to wait 3 days for your results, and then you had to go back in because they wouldn't call you to tell your results. They wanted to tell you in person whether it's positive or negative, because people would harm themselves if they got a positive result over the phone. But I don't know why I just went that direction. But in that time, it did seem like a death sentence if you were gay. It didn't seem like you'd fit in anywhere, and so it was another reason to try to hide it. And I did have a girlfriend for 2.5 years, and thought maybe the gay will go away. And then I thought, well, maybe I'm bisexual. What is that? What's that all mean? And bisexual, I kind of had a little bit on the binary side, like they pick a side, like, you know, you're on the fence, pick a side, because I had a kind of a bias on bisexuality, and I don't anymore. I've learned a great deal more about the adventures of bisexuals, which is so fun. And again, it's just let people be who they want to be, as long as they're not harming anybody. But yeah, I remember, and I remember when I came out to mom, and I remember her telling me that later that she wished she would have handled it better. She cried, of course, and she worried, of course, but
Yeah.
ultimately everything turned out okay.
Well, kudos
Yeah,
to
it
you.
did.
Did you ever find out if anybody else from your class
Oh yeah.
ended up coming out?
It's so crazy. And I'm the one they've all reached out to. Like, how do you do it? And some of them still live back home. And it's just really interesting to see, because then I think about, like, were they thinking that back then? And one of my closest friends came on. She's a lesbian, and she's got a girl, and she got a lot of kids. I think she had 3 or 4 of her own, and then the girlfriend had several of her own, big family. And I think back, like, you know, at the lunch table, we'd sit together, and was she thinking those things that I was thinking? Like, I'm different, I don't fit in. Yeah, it's just really crazy. But yeah, definitely several people since then.
Well, it's good to
Well,
know that you can
Andy,
still be the beacon.
When you mentioned, Mike mentioned that when he told me, I don't know, your dad and I were both in the front room, maybe I don't recall exactly, or maybe, but anyway.
Dad wasn't there.
I know I cried. Okay, but I cried because my instant thought was the struggles he's going to have. How is he going to get through? It's going to be so hard and difficult. And I knew the struggles would be ahead of him. But, you know, it's almost like he's got through it, he's managed, and he's making the best of it. And doing great. I'm proud of him.
Oh,
So
thanks, Mom. Yeah, and
well,
the whole mindset about Mom worrying about like the struggles I would have, that's why we tell these stories. That's why we let people know, like, hey, the more we tell, the more we share these stories, the more people will hopefully not have these same struggles growing up. You know, I see parents with the kids that they're just letting them be themselves, and the kid just looks so happy and looks like that they'll flourish, and they won't have so much of the anxiety that comes along with, you know, having to mask yourself or hide part of you. There's still gonna be stuff like anxiety there. It comes with everything. But it can be managed.
I just remember one event we had at Oracle where a father was talking about a child that transitioned, you know, during childhood, and, you know, showed a bunch of pictures of that child when they were forcing the child to be a certain gender, and just how miserable that child was. And then the minute, you know, they let that go, I mean, it was just like total happiness. So
Mhm.
it's interesting, you know, that can, I mean, that can have such a huge effect.
I forgot I had one more slide I wanted to show y'all. Oh, I meant to tell you this picture on the bottom right. There's Care Bears there in my share doll. I decided, you know what, as an adult, I can have toys. It doesn't matter. But I've been trying to get the toys that I loved when I was a kid and get them back into my life. My Little Pony is one of them. I had a favorite one, so she's back here with me. I've been finding my favorite ones, but my last slide, my thank you slide, I wanted to show you my family. That's, well, of course, Javier's face is covered up, but in the bottom left, that's me and him. But I picked that picture because the sparkly mask, the hat with the crown hat, we really we really help each other be comfortable expressing ourselves. And then that's he's a Greyhound Whippet mix, Prince Samuel Cashew Capote. We got him in November of 2020. Yeah, so he's not been in my life for very long, but he's made a huge significant impression on me. Javier even said at one point he doesn't know who needed whom more, the dog needed me or me needing him, because he found his person to attach to and love. But Samuel's really intuitive. He senses my feelings. If he hears me crying, he comes and comforts me. He's by my side. Sometimes it's like almost too much. It's like I step out of the bathroom, there he is waiting for me. Keep an eye on me. But he's been a huge difference in my life for the better. I never realized just how, like, because you know, people would use emotional support animals just so their dog could go on the plane and such, but I would have that bias on that as well. But ever since having Samuel, I realized, like, no, dogs really can help make a difference in a person's life, or pets in general, whatever it may be. And for me, it's Samuel. I can't imagine not having him at this point.
He's a beautiful dog too.
I love him.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, any final questions?
I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.